why you compare yourself to others. You don't mean to do it, but it happens almost automatically. You see someone doing better, and something inside you quietly shifts. A small voice starts measuring. Am I behind? Am I enough? And the strange part is, even when your life is going well, that feeling still shows up. Why does your mind do this to you? Problem deep dive. It's not always obvious. Sometimes it looks like scrolling through your phone, pausing just a second longer on someone else's success. Sometimes it's sitting in a room, hearing someone talk about their progress, and feeling your own shrink. Or even worse, achieving something you once wanted, but it suddenly feels smaller because someone else did more. And slowly, without noticing, comparison becomes the background noise of your life. It starts shaping your decisions. You hesitate to try things because someone is already ahead. You downplay your own progress because it doesn't look impressive. You feel restless even when nothing is wrong. And over time, it begins to affect how you see yourself, not as someone growing, but as someone constantly behind. But here's the part that's easy to miss. This isn't just insecurity. It's a pattern, a deeply wired one, and it didn't appear by accident. Reframe. You're not broken for comparing yourself. In fact, your brain was designed to do it. Comparison is not a flaw. It's an adaptation, a tool your mind uses to understand where you stand in the world. Thousands of years ago, your survival depended on your position in a group who had more resources, who had more status, who was more valued, because that determined something very real, your safety. So your brain evolved to constantly scan. Where am I compared to others? Not to hurt you, but to protect you. The problem is, the world changed, but the mechanism didn't. And now, you're comparing yourself in a world where you can see everyone all the time, which creates a very different outcome. Psychological mechanism. To understand this, you need to see how your brain processes comparison. There's a concept in psychology called social comparison theory. Your brain uses other people as reference points to evaluate your own life, but it doesn't do this neutrally. It has a bias. It pays more attention to people who are ahead of you because from a survival perspective, that's where the threat is. Here's a simple mental model. Your mind works like a spotlight, but instead of lighting up everything equally, it automatically points upward, toward people who seem more successful, more confident, more ahead, and it ignores the rest. This is called upward comparison, and it triggers a specific response in the brain, a mix of motivation and discomfort, because your brain interprets the gap as something that needs to be closed. Now add another layer. Your brain doesn't compare full realities. It compares visible fragments. They're a highlight to your behind the scenes, so the comparison is already distorted, but your brain treats it as real. And that's where the tension begins, because the gap you feel is often larger than the one that actually exists, and yet it feels completely real. So the question becomes, if your brain is wired this way, how do you stop it from controlling you? Practical framework. You don't stop comparison completely. You change how it operates inside you. Here are 4 steps that shift the pattern. Step 1, narrow the comparison field. What to do? Limit who you compare yourself to. Instead of compare yourself to everyone, choose a small, relevant group. Why it works. Your brain reduces noise when a reference group is smaller. It creates more accurate, less overwhelming comparisons. Real-life example. Instead of comparing your progress to the entire internet, compare it to people at your stage, in your context. Step 2, turn comparison into data, not judgment. What to do when you notice comparison? Ask, what exactly am I noticing? Why it works. This activates the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for analysis, not emotion. It shifts you out of emotional reaction into observation. Real-life example. Instead of thinking I'm behind, you notice they've been consistent for 3 years. That's data, not identity. Step 3, add the missing context. What to do? Consciously imagine the parts of their life you don't see. Why it works. Your brain naturally fills gaps with assumptions, usually unrealistic ones. Adding context balances the mental image. Real life example. When someone seems ahead, remind yourself you don't see their struggles, failures, or timeline. Step 4. Track your own baseline. What to do. Measure your progress against your past self. Why it works. This shifts your brain from social comparison to temporal comparison, which is linked to higher motivation and lower anxiety. Real life example. Instead of asking, am I better than them? You ask, am I better than I was 6 months ago? Step 5. Use comparison as direction, not definition. What to do. Let comparison show you what you value, but not define your worth. Why it works. Comparison often reveals hidden desires. Your brain highlights what matters to you, but identity should not be built on external metrics. Real life example. If you feel triggered by someone's success, ask, what does this show me about what I want? Integration. All of this comes down to one simple shift, from measuring to understanding. Think of your mind like a compass. It points toward what feels important, but it doesn't tell you where you stand. That part you have to define. Comparison is just a signal. It shows direction, not value. And when you treat it that way, it loses its power to shrink you and starts helping you see more clearly. Quiet, empowering, close. You'll still compare yourself sometimes. That doesn't disappear, but it becomes quieter, less sharp, less personal. And over time, you start noticing something different. You're not constantly looking sideways anymore. You're looking forward. And maybe for the first time, you're not asking if you're ahead or behind. You're just moving at your own pace, in your own direction. And that question that used to follow you, am I enough? It slowly fades, not because you answered it, but because you stopped asking it.